Hi guys, welcome. Um, let's talk about Qi Gong. We got a lot of questions today. Let's see how far we'll get. The first thing is, I want to thank everyone for posting a question the last episode. And that really helps me, by the way, because like I said last time, I'm basically talking to myself, so it can get kind of boring. Anyways, okay, from episode 34 at Arnold Donsal Daha 5677. Okay, hi Adam, I hope you're well. Thank you. First of all, follow your work for some time and greatly admire it. Thank you very much. I didn't quite understand your opinion of the practice of Tai Chi, the horizontal and vertical relationship. If you can elaborate a bit on that, I appreciate it. Best regards from Brazil. So I think that was some last episode where I talk about the difference between Qigong and Tai Chi. There's many differences and there's many similarities. Tai Chi is really good for your health as documented by many clinical trials around the world. And it shares a lot of common denominators with modern Qigong, such as the alignment, stacking of the bones, stretching of the vertebrae, doing pore breathing and bone breathing, even unintentionally, moving from the lower center, dantian, filling the dantian in the lower center, body unity. It goes on and on, rooting into the ground, hanging into the sky, filling the container basically as you're moving. But basically, Tai Chi is mainly horizontal because the origin of it is a martial art. In most combat situations, self-defense situations, the enemy is going to attack you. The necessity of combat is going to be from a horizontal plane. Unless someone's jumping out of a tree from the sky, right? So most fights are obviously in the horizontal plane, and therefore a lot of work in Tai Chi, despite the fact that it's hanging from above, is still working mainly on a horizontal plane. And that's what I meant. Whereas Qigong is really for health, right? So it's like a plant. If you look at trees or any plant, most of the time is shaped like this, where the branches and the leaves are reaching for the sky and the roots reaching for the earth. It also relates to the horizontal plane, but mainly is vertical because you want to absorb nutrients from the source, heaven and earth. So most Qigong that is authentic would have its relationship probably 70-30, 70% working on the vertical plane and about 30% working on the horizontal plane, whereas Tai Chi is the reverse in terms of 70-30. So I hope that helps you with your question. If you look a little bit deeper than just the health aspect, though, if you look at the meditative aspect or the spiritual aspect, then it's the same thing. Most spiritual tradition also work on the vertical plane as well. That's what we call merging in a lot of traditions, like in Hinduism or Taoism. Whereas in our daily life, 99% of our relationship is in the horizontal plane. Rather, we're spending time with family or friends, or rather, we're going to work, or rather, we're stuck in a traffic jam. Everything is in a horizontal plane. So we don't really take that much time relating to the vertical plane unless you're a pilot or a mountain climber or a scuba diver. But most people don't have their awareness going vertical and horizontal. So they're lacking that kind of distance or perspective. Because if you're in an argument with somebody, for example, and you're in the horizontal plane, you might take that pretty seriously. But if you're in a helicopter and you're really high, looking down from the sky, and you see two people arguing, because of the distance, you're way more relaxed. So the perspective of vertical is pretty important. The balance is very important. Instead of spending 99.9% of your time on a horizontal plane, it's good to maybe leave 10 or 20% of the time, if you can, to spend some time on a vertical plane, such as walking in the woods, meditating, praying, doing affirmation, gratitude practice. Any spiritual practice that goes vertical will help you loosen the grip of the horizontal plane. That is stressing you out and causing an enormous amount of human suffering, right? Obviously, if you're serious about spirituality, then you'll spend more and more time on the vertical plane and very little on the horizontal plane. So it's not a black and white thing. It's more like a wave, like a spectrum of percentages of where you spend your time. And it is not something you can force, but it's something that we should keep in mind. Because a lot of time we think life itself is in a horizontal plane and neglecting our awareness of what's up and down, unlike most animals or plants, which naturally has that awareness. So, I hope that helps. Next question. Next question is from Zoller DI7XZ. All right. Does Taoism mention how to handle interpersonal relations? Yeah. In fact, in the West, in modern times anyways, most people think Taoism is either a religion or a philosophy. But if you look at the history of Taoism, it is neither in its origin. In its origin, Taoism is a mystical tradition. It's based on the mystics in the mountain sages. And these hermits were practicing mystics practice or arts, which is based on praying and meditation. And it goes up. That was around the Zhou dynasty, and then the next dynasty down in the Han dynasty, they started adding a lot of post-training, which is non-doing tradition. You're not doing anything. And then by the Han dynasty, that's when internal alchemy started to take off, and that was based on a doing tradition where there's stages, a lot of techniques, a lot of methods, a lot of paradigms. Some lineages would do a lot of stuff, some would do little, but in all cases, it becomes a progressive, linear learning thing where there's a ladder you have to climb pretty much, which contradicts original Taoism. And these guys were family systems because most of them were married with children, right? And then a little bit later in the Han Dynasty, it became a religion, mainly because Buddhism arrived in China, spreading really, really fast. Some Taoists felt threatened and started a religion and doing public service, mainly through rituals, praying, and fortune telling. So you went from mountain sages or hermits or mystics, and then later on it became family systems or village systems, and then later on it became religion, right? And then somehow in the modern time, Western scholars mainly, and also modern Chinese scholar, start to say that, yeah, it is a religion, but Taoism is also a philosophy based on Lao Tzu and Cheng Tzu, which is from the Zhou dynasty. But they're misinterpreting something really important, and that is, now it's proven in scholarship, by the way, that the original mystics up in the mountain was practicing something, and then after they had a direct experience through merging, when they came back down, they decided to write about it, and they decided to write how you would use that breakthrough and experience to live your daily life. So people start mistaking that for philosophy, but it was never a philosophy. It was through direct experience. So imagine you went to a country that you never been to, like maybe Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. So let's say I went to Alaska and I lived there for 10 years. And then I came back to Vancouver. And then when I came back, I started writing about Alaska, the culture there, how the people are, how their food is like, what's the language, everything. So I write this big-ass book about Alaska, okay? And then after I'm dead, somebody comes up and pick up that book. But that person that picked up the book have never been to Alaska, but he memorized the whole book. That's pretty useless because you can memorize facts about a book, but unless you actually been to a place, breathed the air, ate the food, talked to the locals, understand the culture, you really don't really understand anything. It's just words. Same thing as sex, same thing as eating, same thing as fighting, same thing as driving, same thing as having children. Until you actually experience something, you don't really know what you're talking about. It's just words. So it's the same as Taoism, right? So when people say Taoism is a philosophy, which comes from Lao Tzu and Cheng Tzu, reading Taoist philosophy doesn't really help that much. It might be intellectually kind of nice to hear, but it doesn't really help that much, right? Because there's no direct experience. That's why history is important. Because the original guys that wrote this stuff, they were all mystics. They were merging, meditating, and experiencing an alternate state of consciousness. When they came back down, they wanted to write about it and how to use it in daily life. So if they had an experience and they use that experience in daily life. But if you never had the experience and just read about how to use it in daily life, is equivalent to what we talked about just now, that you don't have direct experience and you just go in with books and words. So when people say Taoism is a philosophy, it's historically inaccurate, and more importantly, it's not that useful. And that means it doesn't really help reduce human suffering. So it's very important instead to have the experience. That's why in Nei Yi, the oldest scripture in Taoism, it said, can you practice and take counsel from the qi, from the stuff? So when you breathe in the stuff, when you feel the stuff, when you have an alternate state of consciousness, you take counsel from it. You learn from it. And automatically, when you come back down from the vertical plane, you know how to apply it on the horizontal plane, which is daily life. So that later on, when it was written down how to do that, was somehow mistaken as philosophy. So to circle back to your question, does Taoism mention how to handle interpersonal relationship? Yes. If you read the Cheng Tzu and if you read the Lao Tzu, what is mistaken for as philosophy, called the Tao Te Ching and the Cheng Tzu, if you read that, you'll notice that it is 99.9% in how to handle daily life, which is all interpersonal relationship. Rather, it's your relationship to power, relationship to your loved ones, relationship to health practices. So yeah, it's all interpersonal relationship. And you can just pick up a copy of Tao Te Ching, or pick up a Lao Tzu, or pick up a copy of Cheng Tzu pretty much anywhere in any bookstore or on Amazon, right? But if you learn those teachings of Taoism about interpersonal relationship, what I want to say is, and what I underlined earlier, it doesn't really help you unless you have the direct experience of what the Tao is. And hence why mystic practice, sitting, standing, laying down, moving, and walking practices of meditation, Qi Gong, energy work, breath work, whatever you want to call it, is extremely important. Because until you experience that energy, just reading about how to use that energy in your daily life, it doesn't really do much. You got to first experience the energy before you can use it, right? And that energy, you can call it Tao, you can call it Brahman, you can call it Buddha nature, you can call it emptiness, you can call it divine light, you can call it whatever you want. The names don't matter. What matters is you experience it. And that's why practicing is very important, to belong to a tradition and a supportive community where you can practice together. So I hope that answers that question. If you have any more questions, don't be shy. All of you, post it in a comment below and we can definitely explore it some more. But today I just want to lay the foundation so we can have a more meaningful conversation. Okay, if you actually want to have a direct experience and learn some of the things we talked about today with feeling the stuff and not just talk about it, we have a training program. The Taoist community is on my website, adamchainlive.com. There is a weekly live guided Qigong class and also a student library. So if you missed the live stream class, all the classes is in the student library. It comes with a student forum, discounts on retreat, and a bunch of stuff. Just follow the description below to get the links and then go check it out for yourself. Anyways, have a great weekend, guys. See you next time.